Hey everybody, welcome back to an episode of The Why. I'm your host, Mullins, presented by All American Roof Pros and All American Heart Studios. Today I'm sitting down with someone that I think is going to be a really interesting person to get to know, and I'm very excited for the episode because I think she's going to bring some value to you folks, and that is Miss Holli Ramsay. Holli, it's a pleasure to have you on. I start off and I allow my guests to kind of give their elevator pitch, so if you were just introducing yourself to me on the street, how would you introduce yourself? Tell me who you are.
I'm Holli Ramsay, and recently I just started my own flower farm.
Yeah, which I'm excited to talk about.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
I'm so excited to talk about it. And yeah, so let's dive. We're there, so let's go ahead and talk about that. So what inspired you to start a flower farm?
So I've always loved flowers, always. Like it's for as long as I can remember, and I think it was just something that was instilled in me from my grandparents. And then from my mother, who also loved flowers and flower beds, and my aunt, who just has an amazing, flower bed. So it was something I was around growing up. But as I grew older, it was something I could almost therapy kind of thing. Like I saw this meme one time that said, therapy is flower beds, and so I said to, I posted it one time, and I said, if I have 80 flower beds, mind your business.
That's funny.
I might have a lot of therapy issues, so no, but I mean, it's just something really important to me.
Absolutely. We, my wife and I are kind of the opposite. We don't want nothing to go mess with. Like it's
Sure.
just. Everybody's different at the end of the day, but so what's the premise? Is it like fresh cut flowers or okay?
So it started out as we have the land. My husband's a farmer. He said, I can't, lose any more money selling flowers than I can selling corn. So
Absolutely.
take a few acres, how much ever you need, and let's go from there. So he's been really supportive.
That's awesome.
He's been a lot of help, and so that's been helpful because going into this, I didn't realize really how much was going to go into it.
A lot of work, right?
Yeah, yes, I'm learning this really fast. But I wanted a place where people could go to make memories. I want somebody's bridal shower to go and be able to cut flowers together and use them at the wedding. I want people to, baby showers come together and, families. It's a beautiful property. It's nestled within a small hill. It's like a little nook. At the top of the hill, there's this beautiful view of a farm and just hills, and there's always a sunset that's just absolutely gorgeous there, and I wanted to be able to share that with people. It's always been my favorite spot on the property, and I said this is where I want it.
That's awesome.
And so it initially was just going to be just this flower farm. We're going to put stuff in the ground. People are going to come cut it, and it turned into a whole greenhouse. It just grew on its own.
That's
so
funny.
Here we are.
So you got your 80 flower beds, right?
Yeah, yes I do. I have them, and now I don't even know how to take care of all of them in one
funny.
day. So.
Yeah, it's probably, I imagine, because like I was saying, so we have hardscape at our house. That was what we moved in with. And we just were like, yeah, take out that bush. Because I don't, and God bless you for being able to go do it, because I just don't have the patience to even cut it right. And I'm sure there's a lot more science into it than probably people think, right? Or
Sure.
the actual practice.
And I think that's okay because, I don't know anything about roofing.
Absolutely,
And
yes.
I'm glad that you do. And I don't know anything about lots of things, but I do know some things about flowers, and that's why it was important for me to, really open this up as a place that I could meet people and teach them some things and maybe do some things together. And, but there's a place for me in that, and that's where I said, okay, I've got some knowledge here, I can do some growing and I can share this. So I think it's nice when somebody says, I don't know anything about this, and I can say, let me help you.
Yeah.
I want to be part of that. I want to share what I love with you.
It's awesome.
And so it doesn't even have to be your entire, outside landscaping. It can be as something as simple as, cut flowers sitting on your, table for dinner. I mean, just bring that outside in. This is something really important to me, culturally in other countries. We've really gotten away from this here because, our lifestyles are, go, 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 go.
Absolutely.
I don't think truly, and this is something I've always felt, and I have said this to other people, I don't think that our bodies were built and intended to run at the pace that we do. I think that, the whole stop and smell the roses, I think that's so important. And even if you have to make a point to do it, it's important to do it. The hiking, nature, being out in it. There's a reason why you feel better after you've taken a walk. There's a reason why you feel better when you've worked out in the yard a little bit and you see what you've done. And
Absolutely.
so, culturally, looking at other countries, they're healthier than we are in some ways. And it's
in a lot of ways. To be honest, I'm a blunt guy. We're unhealthy as a nation. It's just a fact.
It's that go pace. How are we to be parents? Work full time, go. We've got a game at this time, a practice at this time, and I have to have dinner on the table so that we can all sit down and eat something healthy. Mind you, I need to go and get the food for the. It's a whole thing. I just don't feel like we were designed to run at the pace that we do. And I think that's why we have some of the health problems that we do.
I would agree. I would also argue too that, because if you think about it, it was probably a lot harder to live from a physical aspect.
Sure.
When the prairie was out,
house
on the prairie.
You were working hard.
Yeah, you were working. It was still probably go.
Yeah.
Looking over your shoulder for a wolf, but
also
at the same time, we're very sedentary creatures. It's probably a big part of it.
Sure.
We go to work, we sit at our desk, we do our thing, and it's not all bad. That's needed in today's society.
Absolutely. Yeah. Again, there's a role for every person, and I'm always thankful. When somebody says, I'm an RN, so when someone says to me I really like this type of nursing, and I go, I'm so glad you do, because I don't love that kind, but I do like this, because I've played different roles as a nurse. I've worked in the ER, I've been bedside during dialysis, doing that. I've actually worked as a hospice nurse for quite some time.
Oh, wow.
And I had people say to me, I don't know how you do this, and it's not for everyone.
No.
So but circling back to the whole cultural study, the cultural, they go to markets. They get up in the morning and they go buy their fresh bread. They get their fruits and their vegetables. But something else that they do that I think is really important is they buy fresh flowers. And they bring them home, and that's part of their dinner. That's part of their home. So bringing that nature in, is just so important to me. And I want people to be able to do that. Swing by, pick some flowers, and take it home and enjoy it.
Well, I think I'll be utilizing you guys, because that's one thing I do really enjoy doing for my wife is just I'll stop and grab some flowers and take them home, and they die in a couple weeks or whatever. But you know what? It's just a nice little gesture to say, hey, I love you. That's the market I'd be going after her husband and be like, hey, dude, you should be coming out and cut some flowers. Because if you cut them, she should love you more.
You really put effort into it.
Yeah, absolutely.
So this is funny, but I was actually on my way here today, and I had to stop and get a couple things, and I was sitting in my car, and I look over, and on the tailgate, and I thought, this is so funny. On the tailgate is this young kid, and he has 2 things of flowers that he'd gone into Kroger and bought, and he was putting them together as one big bouquet. And I was watching him do it, and I thought, what a sweet gesture that he's taken the time to go, I want this to be bigger, but just seeing him do it, I think that just the thought behind it means so much. Not just the flowers, but the thought behind it. Because going back in our history, flowers have so much meaning.
Yeah.
Birth, birthdays, funerals. There's so much meaning with flowers.
Yeah, my wife has we had fresh cut flowers at her wedding. They're saved all over our house in a different, some of them are dried, and I think some of them she put in some, I guess it was lacquer.
Oh, sure.
It's all gloss. I don't know. My wife is more artsy than I am, but they are significant. And I could tell you what our colors were, and I could tell you, and you remember, and then you say the funeral thing. I can remember, I forget what they call the big bouquet that's on the casket. There's no name for it. I can't remember, but even those, everybody takes one that's of significant. And it is. It's weird that we put a value in something that if you looked at it arbitrarily, right, it would be very insignificant. But we take it as a sign of beauty, and then as a sign of, a lot of things. There's a lot of meaning.
I think it represents.
Yes, absolutely.
I think it represents seasons. I think that everything is a season, and in life, everything is a season. And something that I'm a mother of 5 children, and
5 kids.
I have 5 grown children. And
Do you enjoy having 5 kids?
I do.
Good. Talk to my wife because she only
Very
wants like
much.
3. I take 7.
Yeah,
Like,
I do. And it was not anything ever, it wasn't planned that we were gonna have this many or whatever, I mean, but that's what it is, and now we have 9 grandchildren. My youngest,
You're a grandma?
yes, my youngest granddaughter just is a little over a month right now, so,
That's awesome.
I mean, this was another reason why I was like, I really like to have something for the grandkids to, like, it be a part of who they are.
Yeah.
Come to the greenhouse with Nana and, cut flowers and learn about things and go out and pick flowers and, like, and they do, they love it. We have grandkids that live around the corner and they'll look out their window and is Mama outside in her greenhouse? Like they look through the window and my other little granddaughter comes and she likes to try to make bouquets and she, it's just so, like, the memories that I feel like that they're going to have from it. And then also, I want it to be a legacy for them. I want them to be able to, grow into helping me there. And being able to maybe someday run it when I'm unable to for myself. So I'm looking for it to be something, long term for the family, but also for the community.
It's awesome. It's something there is something there because my daughter is the oldest on my wife's side, and then she's the second oldest on this side. But also on my wife's side, my in-laws are kind of homesteaders, I guess. They have the chickens, and my father-in-law is actually. He runs a vineyard for his dad, and then my mother-in-law runs the horse farm. So we're very agriculturally centric on that side, but they do the sourdough with the bread, and they actually go to farmers markets and sell sourdough. My wife takes the...
See, there's another thing that I know nothing about. So I'm so glad someone else does.
Yes.
Well, and then go to the market and get sourdough.
Yes, and the markets that, I'm a very Christian guy, and I always reference things back to there, but the markets that Jesus was running around, that you were trading your flowers for bread. And there is a basic principle. The last episode we were talking about money is kind of worthless if we really boil it down. Don't get me wrong, I need money, it's fun, coupons, all that good stuff. But it really is. It's only as valuable as you see it at the end of the day. You're only going to spend so much on a vehicle because it's all you see the value in it, right? But if I have a tangible asset that you need, such as flowers, it's really not that insignificant because somebody wants it, somebody else desires it. To me, that's a better currency, right? If we were able to trade flowers for a roof and it was that valuable to me, and it made that much more sense to me, it's a great transaction place, and quite frankly, we're doing it. We just have a middleman, and then we call that the dollar.
And that's something I've learned with my husband is, he will help other farmers, and then they, in turn, help him with some things. Or I'm using so-and-so's sprayer because, and then they're going to this. And same thing with, corn, or, we'll bag corn for people for deer. Or we also have sweet corn, which we've already planted a huge patch of, so I'm pretty excited.
Is it right beside the flowers?
It is.
See, the smart business move there.
Yeah, so we really are, all of a sudden, it was going to be, we're going to just have some cut flowers, and now it's we're putting in sunflowers and sweet corn, and we're going to have pumpkins, and it's just really taken a life of its own.
Yeah, sounds like you guys are going to have a whole family fun day down there.
Yeah, I think so. But it's been really great in the sense that the people we've met.
Yeah.
I'm kind of if anybody who knows me and truly knows me, I am an at-home. I love being in my flower beds. I love, I love being in my house. So it's, to have the community come to me, people, you're going to hang out with people, you're going to and I'm I've actually met so many neat people, and just there's so much to learn from them.
There is.
There's been people come in and tell me some things, and I'm I never knew that. So it's been kind of neat.
But you have to be open to learning.
Yes.
I talk to a lot of business owners. I try to, I don't want to say I consult, because they may even look at it that way. I guess I'm just giving advice, but I look at it as consulting because, I'm trying to help. And some of them are no, you don't know anything. I'm okay, that's fine. I failed doing it that way, but you can not listen. Or then others are oh man, I never, like you said, I never really thought about it that way. And it's...
You do have to be open to learning.
Yes, and you have to have good relationships.
You have to understand that learning process is till the very last breath that we take.
You stop learning, you're dying.
Yes, and our one of our daughters is, she's in Wilmington College right now for agriculture, and she's away out of state right now, and I told her, I said, each little thing that you do is going to, just build on your learning process. Last year you did this as an internship. This year you're doing this, and look at the growth that you've had so far. And it's hard when you're a little bit younger to realize that your timeline is like this.
Yep.
And that this is a little tiny piece of your timeline, and you have this much more of growth and learning and things. And so, yeah, I'm very open to learning, because I think early on, as a lot of us when we're young, we think we know a lot.
Oh yeah,
and
we think we know
find
everything.
out really fast that we just really don't know anything at all. And so I've learned that I need to be open to listening, and that I can learn something from someone else, and there's not just one way to do things, and so it's that building process.
Well, and Dr. John, are you familiar with Dr. John Maxwell at all?
Mm-mm.
He's the best-selling leadership author. If I have a copy of his book somewhere, I'm looking for one, because we usually have extra copies of stuff in here. If I have one, I'll send you with it. But he talks about, so when he's a phenomenal public speaker, and he talks about when he first started. And this was like back in the Zig Ziglar. Well, it was pre-Zig Ziglar. Who was it? Napoleon Hill, maybe. He had got some tapes. This is how old this fellow is. He's in his 70s, but he said, "All right, if I just do this for 5 years, then I'll be a master of it." And he said, 5 years later, I turned around and I went, I don't know anything. But he was much better than he already was.
Yep.
And it's amazing when you get into something that you're really passionate about, such as flowers. You get a couple years down the road and you're like, I don't know anything yet.
No. You get like 3 weeks into it.
Yes.
Because I was like, well, we did that wrong.
That's the best way to learn. I love
We're
it.
learning a lot.
Yes.
We're learning a lot. And, there are some things I will say, like, oh, you know what, we'll do this again this way next spring. Or then we're also looking at it and going, we won't do that again. We know better than to do that, or this will grow, or, because in Ohio, we have a shorter season than a lot of flower growers.
Absolutely.
So, you really have to kind of be on top of things. You've got to be starting seeds at a certain time, and you've got to, so there was a huge learning curve for me, and probably will continue to be a learning curve for me, and I'm okay with that, because I want to learn more.
Yeah, you should challenge yourself. You should feel uncomfortable. My in-laws actually are putting in and they're up north. I live in Norwalk.
Mm-hmm.
They're in Berlin Heights, and they're putting in a self-cut flower on they're calling it the homestead, but we actually did a small business spotlight with them, J&L Family Farms, and they sell all their breads and stuff, but then they're also doing the fresh cut flowers now. And I was like, that's not for me, but y'all have fun with that,
Yeah.
No,
and it's not for everyone, but
But I like the
said,
premise, and I like your passion behind it.
Mm-hmm.
That's what makes it fun to me. Like when business owners are actually passionate, like you see all these people that are just like going through the motions. Well, heck, you probably saw plenty of people in the nursing field that, I'm just got to pay for this or whatever. It was a money thing. They're transacting their time.
I think that the idea behind something looks really good until you're truly, really into it, and then you realize maybe this wasn't for me, or maybe I wasn't a best fit for this. And so, I was lucky enough to go to school later, and I was considered a non-traditional student because I was older in college. But I was lucky, and I had the support and the push to, go do it if you want to do it. You can do anything you want to do. And sometimes, you realize really quick that you're your only person who limits yourself. It's you. It's not anyone else. It doesn't matter what anyone else says. It's you that can limit, what you're able to do. So, I think you realize once you get to the point and realize that, it's you.
Yeah, no, it is. I tell people, it's like people be like, who's your competition in the business? Who's your competition? I'm like, we don't have any. Like, I'm not saying that disrespectfully. We have people we compete against in the marketplace, but we don't have competition. And the reason being is because it's all up here. It's in between my ears. There's 7 inches right here that screws me up all the time. Like, it has nothing to do with anybody besides me.
And, that's a really good thing that you brought up there, because, we live in a country where we are, it's just as many Amish and Mennonites as there are with English.
Yeah, we're in a weird spot.
Yeah, so when I initially first thought about like opening the greenhouse, the flower farm part, people were, how are you going to compete? And my first thought was like, I'm not trying to compete. I know what they have to offer, and I want to try to offer something different. My idea behind it is different. Like the reasoning behind what I'm doing is different. And so, I have no interest in competing with anyone else. I think that there is a market for everyone and everything. So, they're doing really well. They do great. I just heard from the Amish neighbor across the road that one of the Amish places had 450 cars on Saturday.
Which is
I
wild.
don't have room for that yet.
No,
So,
yeah.
And I actually saw him and I said, Eli, did you have 450? And he said 447.
Yeah, the exact, yeah.
And he said, and I don't have parking for all of it. And I said, oh my goodness.
That's funny.
So, but I mean, I've learned a lot also from the people around me, the farmers around me, and I'm not ready for that kind of car space,
Yeah.
But I'm also not in a place where I want to compete with anyone. I think that we can learn from each other, and that again,
I think it comes down to intention when you talk about competition. Like if your intention is to just provide for your family and provide a better service or quality of product, because differentiation in the marketplace is really what sells, and that's where I guess this would be a good interpretation between Amish and English. That is what they call us. That's how we put that together. For those of you who aren't familiar with that, but it's kind of the same way with people who are in business and people who aren't in business, right? It's the same mentality. Is they don't understand what the marketplace like. It's a free market. Like there's plenty of roofs out here. I don't care how many roofing companies pop up. We're just going to keep doing our thing. The same thing for you. If you're doing something that you feel like you're providing service and value to the community, there isn't competition because you have your customers and you have your niche, and that's what works for you. And you're exactly right. There's not a competition. It's much like the farmer mentality, which that is the one thing that the farmer community is phenomenal at, is the fact that if a neighbor needs help, they're going to help. There's
they really do.
Yeah, and that's
a part of community that I was unaware of before I met my husband. I didn't realize the amount that they help each other, the amount that they lean out. Do you have this part? This is broke down. Can you help me with this? There's a lot of that going on that we could learn from.
Absolutely, and the rest of the world could. How many times do we pass somebody on the side of the road that's broke down and we don't think twice about stopping? One thing that my wife and we try to do. We have a couple of kids we take to church with us every Sunday, and if we pass somebody that's panhandling, homeless, however you want to put it, I'm very adamant. It's just my personal belief. I'm not a money guy. I'm not going to give you money. But I always have an extra water and some beef jerky or something in my car, and I'll be like, hey. And, it's, but that's the thing, is how many of those people are you driving past when you have an opportunity to serve them? And it's no different than the farming community. How often, the farmers that nobody likes are the ones that they're not serving anyone but themselves. And I talk about a conversation all the time. I give an illustration called self-worth over net worth. And if you don't put your self-worth over top of your net worth, you'll never have a high net worth. Because at the end of the day, we're all going to end up in a pine box in the ground. As an ER nurse, unfortunately, a hospice nurse, you know all too well about that. And I guarantee you never once in any of those scenarios, and I guess maybe I'm putting words in your mouth, but just in my experience, I don't think you ever got to the end of someone's life where they were worried about, how much how much money they had in the bank, how much they, how big their house was, how nice their car. They wanted their family around them. They wanted to be surrounded by people that cared about them and loved them, and that's what mattered.
And as a hospice nurse, I can tell you that I have spent many private moments with patients, and the funny thing is they'll tell me something they wouldn't tell their family. They don't want their family to worry about certain things. They don't want a family member to think this or to think that, and they're very open about, those last moments are so raw and just so, and the things they're thinking about is their family and their loved ones, and how they're going to be leaving them in the care, and what it's going to mean to them when they're gone. And there's just so many things that they tell you that it's eye-opening. It's an experience that I'm thankful to have had, because I think that it has made me look at my own life and reflect what's important and what isn't. And I think that's why I'm such a little homebody. I'm such a I'll just be, because my peace is so important to me, because I know how short life really is. I've seen it over and over again. I've truly witnessed the importance and the value of it. So yes. I think that's why behind my flower farm, the whole idea of it is memories and being with your friends and your family, and those are the things that you can take with you.
Absolutely. Yeah, because that's, when we've all lost loved ones, and when we look back on those, that's all we have. I mean, and I'm not a material person. That's just not me. If someone leaves me $1 million, I'm just not going to bring back that person, right?
No.
And that's that's where I struggle. Like I tell my parents all the time, because they're young. I mean, they haven't even been young. I'm 31. Both my parents were 21 and a half. I'm like, spend it all. Because mom all the time, she's like, well, it's a house in a trust. I'm like, yeah, put a reverse mortgage on it. I don't care. Like, I'll be fine or I won't, because hopefully you get another 30 years and I'll be 60 at that point, and then what does it matter? I don't need that. Like, that's not going to move the needle for me one way or the other, hopefully, at that point in my life. You know, hopefully I'm pretty well set at that point, you know?
I think that says a lot about you, that there's no entitlement there. There's no, I'm expecting this, or I'm, and what you do value. I think that says a lot. So, and I think that a lot of us could be a little bit more like that. What's important and what isn't.
Well, and that's what like my prayer is for the rest of the world. I wish that people would just understand that, like, all of the crap. I was fortunate enough to spend some time on. I spent a week-long mission in Africa, and I don't care what third world country you've been to in the Caribbean. It does not even pale in comparison. Have you ever been to Africa?
No.
Okay.
I've done, way when I was a lot younger, I did some like inner city mission type things or whatever, and
it's still very eye-opening.
Yeah. I mean, like, and just also being a hospice nurse and going into just even in this area into different homes, I've learned a lot and saw like how some people were living, and it's very humbling.
It is. It is, and that's the thing is, like, I'm not saying that you can't have nice things, but also to be appreciative for what you do have.
I think that matters.
Yeah, and we play the comparison game in America, right? That's what, I'm watching these people who are making, I think they told me, there's no minimum wage in Uganda where we were, if I remember correctly. But I think the average wage was like $40 a month.
A month?
A month.
I mean, what does that provide for then? I mean, it's.
But they're going to their markets, because we visited them, and they're selling I bought I've shared the story a lot on the podcast, but I think it's cool to share really fast. My wife found out she was pregnant with my daughter while I was in Africa, so that was like a cool little like thing.
Yeah.
But I bought a painting that's actually hanging on her wall. And now what we do is when we go somewhere, we try to find a handmade piece of art. And then she's got a wall in her room.
Well, that's a neat memory.
Yeah, and we're buying memories, right?
Yeah.
Like my daughter's already been on a cruise. She'd be a year tomorrow. She's already been on a cruise. She's been to 4 countries already. She's been on like 12 plane rides. And for me, I'm going to spend my money on time. Like, I am the worst person to give a gift to. I'm the worst person to buy a gift. Like, I am just not that guy. Like, Mother's Day, I was like, day of, and I'm a very poor planner. I think we as men are that way. Maybe your husband's not, but I think as a general race, we're pretty last minute kind of guys, right?
I think it's too. I mean, you have to consider, what you're doing. You're doing a lot of things.
Yeah,
too.
and we're busy,
I think
and
it's important as a wife for us to remember that.
Yeah,
so.
and my wife does. She's not unappreciative, but like
right.
we went to the zoo. That was more enjoyable to me than anything else I could have bought my wife. We don't do cards. We don't, like, it's just not us. And I'm not, because I'm not fully understanding. There's 5 love languages. We just know that ours aren't those. Like, they aren't gift giving. They're acts of kindness or acts of service, and quality time and physical touch. Those are the 3 big ones that we focus on in our marriage.
So you read the book?
Oh yeah, I've met Dr. Chapman twice.
Well, I mean, I actually read the book also, and
it's phenomenal.
It really is. It kind of makes you look at just relationships in general and just kind of go, oh, I could have done better at this, or I could have done this, or and you look back on in situations and you go, well, I could have done, so
yeah, once you realize that you weren't even speaking the same language.
No, I mean, and that's so difficult because communication is so important, and if you're not speaking the same language, I mean, you could be saying the same things to each other, but you're not interpreting that because you don't speak the same language, so that's very difficult. Yeah,
to know how you receive and quite frankly how you generally want to give love, right? It's very important in a marriage. And so I got to hang out with Dr. Chapman once. I've seen him speak twice. I've met him personally once, but he's a great human being, and just amazing how he even developed that, because he was a marriage counselor and he started to piece it all together and go,
oh sure,
something's.
I can imagine.
Because she says she's doing everything but once you realize that, how many marriages should have worked, and they just weren't even talking,
not the same language.
One speaking Spanish and one speaking English, it just didn't work.
Yeah.
And it's crazy. But once you realize that, it's bam, eye opener. Oh yeah, we don't We have a lot of crap because I think most Americans do, but we don't need that crap to be, like I tell people all the time, God strips us all away, puts me in a cardboard box with my kid and my dogs and my wife, and I'll be A-okay. Like, I'll figure it out. But that's the problem.
I with my kids being grown adults, everyone, there's times where you'll have conversations with them and I'll say to them, I can't tell you what to do, but I can tell you what not to do because I've learned this.
Yes.
So I definitely have learned a few things when it comes, even with friendships. I mean, you learn that, and I think the hardest thing for me throughout my life has been that I do believe sometimes God will close a door for you that you won't close yourself.
And it's going to hurt.
Mm-hmm.
It's going to hurt either way.
And that's in friendships, that's in relationships. I think sometimes, doors are closed for you and then, when the dust settles and you see things a little clearer, you go, okay, I understand why, And so, but, I think the biggest, hardest life lesson is finding out that not everybody has the same heart you do. I've told my son that before. I said, not everybody has the same heart you do. And when somebody does something to you, you just can't believe that they would do such a thing, or they would talk to you that way, or that action happened. And you go, well, because I would never do that to them. Well, they're not the same person you are. And you have to, offer them grace, and that's a difficult thing to do too. So.
Well, your grace and especially speaking as a male with testosterone, as a man, is one of the hardest things because you don't want to. You just want to fix things. And,
yeah. Oh, you're fixers.
Yeah, and we're providers, and we want to just get it done.
We just, as a female, we wouldn't just want to tell you. I want to tell you, this is what's happening, and this is what I'm upset about. And as a husband or a significant other, you and in return want to fix what that is because that's what you want to do for her or him.
Because we're mechanically inclined.
Absolutely.
We're mechanical creatures. You're emotional creatures generally.
And I've said this before. I'm like, I do not understand why we have to think so differently.
Yes.
I don't even understand the point of it. But, there are times where I go, I'm so thankful that, my husband is the head of our household. I'm thankful that he thinks differently than I do because I wouldn't have handled that this way. Or maybe I would have. So, kind of evening each other out, I think that, because he thinks differently, he was able to handle a situation that, I probably would have differently or however. So.
Well, we should compliment each other as significant others. And that's where the world drives me wild, is like, you shouldn't be, like, we are equals from a respect standpoint,
Sure.
but otherwise I can't nurture my daughter the same way my wife does. It just doesn't work that way. My wife gets frustrated with me because she'll get fussy, and it's not that like I'm a butthead or anything to her, but I'm just like, she can see the frustration for me because once again I just want to fix it. And like when she's sick this week, I don't know what's wrong. I want her to be better. It's not that I don't care.
There are other things you probably can offer her that are different.
Yes.
So, that's where that compliment
Yes, exactly.
And
I'm the provider. I'm the one that goes out and hunts and kills, if you put it that
Sure.
way, from a nature standpoint. I'm hoping that I know that I'm the protector. I use the analogy all the time, or the demonstration of, like, my wife gets up with our daughter and feeds her and all that good stuff, and I don't wake up. But because I somehow earmuff, don't hear her cry. She could be laying right beside me and I sleep through it. But the second I hear something that sounds like danger, whether the dogs are barking or the alarm goes off, or like we had the
you're
outlet.
in tune with that.
Yes, I'm ready to go.
It's what you're in tune to.
But that's the clearest representation of the two complementary to make sure that we're raising this baby to be the woman that she's going to be. And it's aggravating sometimes when people were like, well, we gotta. No, you guys have to complement each other to make sure that baby gets everything that they're supposed to have. And some men may be better nurturers than their wives, and vice versa.
And that's where they complement each other.
And exactly.
I just heard something recently, and I don't know if it was TikTok or something social media.
Yeah.
I don't even want to admit that I'm like, scrolling or whatever, but you have
Doom
to have.
scrolling, just
Yeah, that's what it's called. I don't know. Sometimes I do, because sometimes you just have to have that quiet down, don't think about anything, you can learn a lot from it.
Yes.
And I just recently saw where a counselor was saying, like, this 50-50 thing, between a husband and wife or a significant other, it should be 100-100.
Yes.
You're serving each other.
Was that a pastor that said that?
I'm not really sure.
I think I follow him. It's his name's Tyler. I'm 99% sure that's who said it.
I just remember thinking, like,
I heard it. It was
makes sense. Like, it shouldn't be about, you know, percentages, or it shouldn't be about, you know, like, I'll do for you and you do for me. If you're like fully serving each other, you know, I think that that's where it all comes together.
Well, and two, like, I'm working on a book right now called Identity Crisis, and it's actually inspired by my mom. And because her whole identity was motherhood, and then we all left. And then
I remember.
Like, you probably felt the same thing.
Absolutely.
Especially because you said you're running around doing this, doing that, you know.
Well, you know, like, I got pregnant really young, and, you know, not everybody is the same. Again, you don't all have the same heart, you don't all think the same way. And it was just an immediate feeling for me of, this is my baby to take care of. This is my world now. Yep. Like, there was no, like, I still want to go out, I still want to hang out with friends. Like, it just wasn't a thing for me at all. It was, this is what it is now. And, like, I mean, it was a complete, like, this is how it's going to be. And that love I felt for him was just so unconditional.
That's weird.
And it was, like, the first time I'd ever really, truly felt unconditional love. And I remember thinking, like, okay, well, this is it forever for me. You know, this is, you know, that young mind thinking that this is your forever, you know? Like, so,
absolutely.
And then all of a sudden you realize that it goes really fast.
It does.
Yeah, so, but I do remember thinking, like, you know, this is what is important to me, and this is what matters, and I'm thankful for that, because I made decisions based off of, you know, him. And to this day, I mean, like, I'm so thankful for my kids and whatever, but that transition from, you know, having a house full of kids and all that to the quiet was very uncomfortable.
It was weird because it was like a light switch at the.
It was uncomfortable. Yeah.
So that's what, you know, if we put so like when I speak on stage, I always ask them to introduce me as a Christian first, a husband second, a father third, and a leader last. And I do that very intentionally because I think I put everything in Christ because I look at that as myself. But then I also need to focus on being Tori's husband over being Lainey's dad.
Sure.
And that's where I see young marriages struggle because because you're right. The second that baby's born, even freaking know, like you have no idea. It's the weirdest, like.
Yeah, all of a sudden the whole world is just a different place.
And you forget the version of yourself that you were before that baby. Like my wife and I talk about it all the time. We're like, we know that there was a life before, but like we don't.
Wait till you have grandbabies.
I'm sure.
Oh,
yeah.
This is so all of a sudden.
Don't wish that on me soon.
Oh no, you're a ways away.
I know I am,
but I'm was a young mother, so I was a young grandmother, and so I just am thankful for that in a sense that, you know, yes, it was really difficult to be young and going through things the way that I did and the route that I took, you know, it was difficult, but like now I feel like that there's some things that are, you know, I'm a younger grandmother in the sense that, you know, I'm enjoying them in a different way. I have, you know, the energy, a little bit of energy. Usually when they leave, I'm like, I'm done.
Yeah.
I have them for a day, I'm
You're
like,
checked
I don't
out.
know how I did that.
Yeah.
How did I be a grandma? How did I be a mother? Because as being a grandma, I'm just exhausted by the time they leave. So
They'll run you ragged.
Yeah.
But, you know, I was thankful that my parents did have me when they were young because I got a lot of time with my grandparents. Mm-hmm. That's the way that I look at it today. And obviously and I am thankful that I got a lot of time with my parents as well, you know, because they're both still here. And I hopefully get a lot more. But that's the kind of the way, you know, that's where like you kind of juggle that because you're like, well, I don't know if I'm ready financially. And I tell everybody, I'm like, you're not. Like my wife and I were pretty well off at that point, but like we still had like, oh, did we do this? Did we do that? We bought a house like while my wife was pregnant because we needed a bigger house. And I'm waiting for the perfect time. It's like, there's not. That's you as a young parent, you figure it out. It just doesn't.
You do, and you know, you were speaking about earlier about like the memories and going places and doing the things, and I mean, I look back and think about the stuff that we did because I mean, we weren't financially really stable or set, you know, but we had everything we needed.
Absolutely.
And the kids, I mean, they were happy, and you know, if it meant jumping on the trampoline together or playing games, or I mean, like all of my kids grew up coloring. We would color. We would just sit and quietly color together or whatever. And I mean, it was just all those little tiny memories. Like they will say to me things here and there, and I'm like, okay, those things matter too.
Well, that's the other thing too. Is like these parents stress about, oh, I've got to buy this or buy, but I don't remember a single thing. Like I remember objects, obviously that I had growing up, but like. I guess the one that I do remember is like my grandparents on my dad's side never were really like super well off financially, but my grandmother always, because she was like shack poor. Like it was her whole entire house with 7 siblings was probably like as big as this room. Like it, I've seen it. It doesn't. It's not a house anymore. It's just off in the woods, and you can kind of look at it when you go down there in Portsmouth. But like my grandmother would make sure like she was over the top. Like she worked until she was 77, 78. But like Christmas was always like, that was the Christmas you looked forward to. And I'll never forget, like she bought, and there was a lot of grandkids. Because there was 4 kids. I think there's in total 13 or 14 grandkids, and then now there's a ton of greats.
Yeah.
But this was when I was like 7 or 8. So there was probably 11 of us at that time. And she bought every single one of us an iPod. And like, that was not cheap. Like looking back, I'm like, holy crap.
I remember when my kids wanted iPods.
I was like, how did she, like, she spent like $4,000 on iPod, because they were, like, the original ones were expensive. But like, I look at that and I like, now I'm appreciative from the aspect of like,
I'm sorry.
No, you're fine. But I'm like, that's how she showed, like, she would tell you she loved you. It's not like how she showed love, but like she just wanted you to feel more than she got to as a kid. Because you were saying about like how your son and talking about other people having a different heart. Like I always look at that. I always try to put myself in someone else's shoes, and I'm like, I'm not always good at it. Don't get me wrong, because sometimes I'll just lose my top. But
we're not perfect.
No,
and I think,
absolutely.
I think if we remember that we're not perfect and that we're humans and that we're allowed to make mistakes, and it's what you do after. The after is what really matters.
Absolutely.
Do you repeat it? Do you try to learn from it?
But if you could put yourself in someone else's shoes and go, all right, I didn't live their trauma. I'm not in the same chapter they're in. I don't know what they were going through today or in this stage or season of life. Or, I had a guy, it was like a month ago. I stopped. He almost hit me. He was clearly texting and driving, and then flips me off in my rearview mirror. And I'm like, how am I the bad guy here?
Do you just like, I'm so unbothered by things like anymore. Stuff like that is just to me like, okay.
I don't know what it was. So I just waved. I'm like making fun at that point, and so then he tries to go around me because it's a 2-lane road. So I speed up, and then that pissed him off worse. So then I'm like, all right, this is fun. And I'm driving a wrapped company vehicle, and like the heathen came out of me. That's what it comes down to.
Really,
yeah.
I mean, let's just be honest.
And then then I'm driving because he goes by me, and I get double birds, and I think I did the Spanky. Was that who that was in Little Rascals?
Yeah.
And I think I might have blew him a kiss. And
don't escalate it by any means.
No, I was totally rational about the whole thing. But then I remember afterwards, I'm like, man, that guy was probably having a really bad day, and it almost got worse. So then you kind of just put yourself back in that perspective change. But in the moment, I'm not always perfect. I don't claim to be. I'm gonna still slip up. But when you can take that, and even like around here, when a customer is upset, I'm like, okay, well maybe it wasn't entirely us. Maybe it was just the day's not going right. They're in a bad season of life. How can we just serve them better? How can we just make it a little bit better, right?
Well, I mean, like if we go back to the communication part of it, like I mean, with like a significant other, I mean, we're with them a large amount of time, and we still can miscommunicate.
Absolutely.
So imagine with somebody that you don't know any at all. They don't know how you communicate, vice versa. I mean, I think it's really easy to just like hear a message or a text and just like misread or misunderstand.
Texting is the worst for that.
Oh, it's so hard because you can't read tone.
Yep.
So, but going back to, not knowing if he had a bad day or not, like I think, a really hard lesson for me was when I was a young ER nurse. Sometimes you wouldn't always be treated the best. You would take care of somebody and maybe possibly, play a role in bringing them back to life maybe, and then the aftermath is, them treating you one way or another or talking to you a certain way, or I mean, you can't even imagine the things that can happen in those small little rooms. And I took things personally sometimes, and it took me a really long time to get to a point and to know that this isn't about me at all. It's not about me. I know that I'm doing my best and I'm trying to give my best care, and this is about them in a situation they're uncomfortable.
Yeah, they're afraid.
They don't know what's going on. Maybe it's a health scare, or who knows what it was like walking into the door, who they were with before this, what their life is going home from here. And just taking that perspective like really changed how I was as a nurse. Like,
absolutely.
So it wasn't about me. And maybe, him and that whole situation wasn't about you at all, and you were right to think that, after it escalated.
Yeah. In the moment, I was like, this guy's being an asshole. Like, I was.
You're like, okay.
I just stepped right into my skin.
We're
I'm
doing
like,
this.
because when I was younger, I would pretty much, like, not physically fight, but I'd escalate things at the drop of a hat. And now I'm just like, I will flat out tell somebody, like, if you try to pick a fight with me, I'm like, I don't fight with my wife. I'm not going to fight with you.
Yeah. I mean, well, you know that about yourself.
Absolutely.
You have learned, and you know that, hey, you're recognizing that I might be a little reactive. And so, I mean, that's a hard thing to change, because it's not something that, like, you think about. Reaction is like, it's now. Like, so to have to take a point and think about how you're going to respond and how you're going to act about this situation when it happens that quick, that's a lot of work.
It is, and a lot of times too, it comes back. So I'm a big psychology guy. Like, I love financials, or, like, not financials. I love data, and I love psychology. And I realized that, like, I had a Navy SEAL actually tell me this. That's a whole long story. I won't dive into that, but between the ages of 6 and 11 is when we find our identity as human beings. That's when we develop, and by the time you're 11, you're pretty much who you're going to be for the rest of your life. Although you may change a little bit, but you have the core principles and who you're going to be. The hardest part in knowing that is then going, what made me in this thing that I don't like, or that's not making me effective for the world, and trying to figure out why. So for me, I realized that that's how my parents divorced when I was. They officially divorced when I was 6, but it was very unhealthy afterwards. And I realized then that's what caused that. So then I had to kind of go, okay, we're just not going to, like, that's not how we're going to handle conflict. We're just going to be a little more level-headed about things. Not to say that I still don't have my moments, but that's what I'm working towards. So then once you start to realize that, then you go, all right, so for my kids, obviously just as a general rule, I don't want to be that person, because I don't want to create that trauma for them. Which I find the word trauma funny sometimes, because I feel like in our world today, everybody's like, this is trauma. It's like, well, and as a ER nurse, you know what trauma is. Like that. But emotional and physical trauma are two entirely different things, but also it's more of a broad spectrum when it comes to the term of it, because obviously a paper cut is trauma, but it's not the level of trauma you generally see in the ER, right?
It's all perspective.
It's 100% perspective based. So that's where we have to be careful on ourselves to not call every little thing that's going to happen for us, because nothing really happens to us in our lives trauma. But that's another thing too, is when you stop letting life happen to you and start letting it happen for you. Even the bad is like, okay, it's going to make me or break me. It's who I am.
I think there's a fine line between, like, not giving a crap at all, and then just being like I said earlier, like, kind of unbothered. Like, it would take a lot to really get me to a point where I would be reactive about something, because I've gotten to a point where I just am so passive in the fact that, I know everybody has their own thing going on, and that, that everything isn't about me. And that the world doesn't revolve around me. And you're born, you come into this world crying and hungry, and the world revolves around you, right? And it takes us all of our lives to figure out that it's not about us at all. So I think, that's where I'm at now.
Absolutely.
I'm not, don't give a crap. I care about people a great deal, but I mean, there's some things I'm totally unbothered by. For sure.
Yeah, and you have to, because if you care about every single little thing or everyone's individual problems, it's not gonna. You're just gonna run yourself dry.
Well, you lose your peace.
Yes. Yeah, you're going to take the burden for them, and a lot of times you won't even take it. A lot of times you'll just either accelerate it or maybe bring it down a little bit.
Sure.
But it doesn't really do any favors. You try to help where you can, but at a certain point you do have to just wash your hands of things and be like, you know what, it's just not my place.
I think that, peace is so important to me, and I think just the flowers part, like, that's something I've always gone to, and I think that protecting my peace is so important, and that's why, I have to decide what I'm participating in and what I'm not, and that's when you finally get to a point in your life where you realize that you don't have to participate in every conversation, you don't have to participate in every person's trauma. You can be there and be supportive and loving as a friend, but it doesn't have to be your trauma, your problem. It doesn't have to be, and so I think that if more of us were able to do that, I think that health-wise, we'd probably be a little bit better off too.
Well, and then, the social media thing, which you kind of hinted on a little bit, that doesn't help anything. That's a kind of a little bit of a lighter fluid on the fire.
It depends though, because like if you've ever seen the TikTok that it says, I am responsible for my FYP.
Yeah, absolutely.
Because sometimes I'll get stuff on there and I'm like, what am I watching that I got this? But I get a lot of like flower things.
It's wild how the algorithm works.
And so I am learning stuff that I'm like, oh, I never even thought about that, or oh, this is a really great idea. And I'm creative. I like to, okay, I want to do this, but then it just grows from here. So, I think that it depends on what you're allowing in to be, if it's a negative experience.
Oh, absolutely. Well, and that's what I guess it boils down to, is because like mine it's not a lot of roofing stuff, but it's a lot of leadership and then a lot of Christian-based content. And you're exactly right though, because but we love as a, I don't even know if it's as a species or if it's as a culture here in America, but we love drama. That's why, what's that show with Sister Wives? Is that the one?
Oh yeah.
It's been on for 19 seasons. I saw the other day. I was like, why are y'all? And then people will complain about it and be like, oh, it's the dumbest. But y'all are watching it because otherwise they wouldn't leave it on.
It's because it's just something that you don't. It's a culture. It's an idea of something that you're not used to.
Correct. It's intriguing.
And that's why people are interested in what Amish people do.
Yes.
It's something that you're not, and it is intriguing. And it's like, how can you? And you try to put yourself in their position and be like, oh, I couldn't do this or I couldn't do that or So I think that it
depends, absolutely. But then now, like I've talked about you're responsible for your FYP. Somehow I got on Sister Wives TikTok. I don't know how. That's a whole thing. But apparently as deep as they are now, it's like just a big drama. It feels like the Kardashians from what I could gather in the couple things I watched. And once again, y'all are feeding into that. And that's no different than on social media. If you get on the Talk of Wherever You Live At's page and go, oh yeah, I'm mad about that too. Okay, yeah, that's what you're going to probably continue to see because it's how algorithms work, but also because that's what you're putting out into the world. So it's going to bring some stuff back to you. Energy is real. There's positive and negative out there. Back to Dr. John Maxwell. He calls the elevator principle. Either you're bringing people up or you're bringing them down. There's no in between. It's always moving. And once you realize that and go, oh yeah, I probably should be pulling people up. Or if you are just a miserable person, you want to bring everybody down to your level, that's up to you. But guess what? You're going to probably get reciprocal of that energy, and they're going to start bringing you down more, And it's just putting positivity. I think that's kind of what you're doing with the flower. Is you're just trying to spread a little bit of positivity, a little bit of love, a little bit of happiness into the world. And if more people took that vantage point on life, it's amazing. It would be amazing at how much different the world really could be. But too often we want to play the judge, right? And with you becoming a young mom, I'm sure there were a lot of people that had their things to say about that or had their own opinion on what should be done. Whether that was adoption or I'm not even going to talk about the other options that people talk about. I'm sure you probably heard from very few people. I don't know how young you were when you got pregnant.
I was in high school.
Okay,
So, and that's when I said, I had him and I was like, oh, well, nothing else exists outside of this now, which, looking back and looking at other girls at that age, I think, how did I think that way? That's just crazy because I can't, wrap my head around now at this age. I'm almost 50 now and I'm feeling like, how did I... But, I chose not to go back to school after having him. And, there was just this overwhelming feeling of, I can always go back to school. I can never get this time back with him.
Absolutely.
And I haven't regretted a second of it.
No.
Now, did it make me a non-traditional student? Yes. Did I have to years later go back and get a GED and then do all the tests to go into college? And surprisingly, I did well. And, but I didn't know I could do those things. I didn't know that I was even smart enough. I had, felt like for so many years that, I'm a dropout and I'm this and I can't do that, and it wasn't until I had a little bit of encouragement and push that said, you can do anything that you want to do. And, you tell your kids those kinds of things and it goes in one ear and out the other.
Absolutely.
And then you're like, okay, I can do anything I want to do.
Yeah, you got to let them learn the hard way. That's it.
Yeah. Yeah. So, but yeah, it was difficult. It was, I think, again, it wasn't always about me, what people's ideas and thoughts were. It was their perspective of it and how it made them feel.
That's what I was getting ready to say. The people that's where you don't want to try to put yourself in someone else's shoes because you weren't at that place.
Yeah.
Your chapters are different.
It's that whole timeline idea.
Yes.
This is my little tiny timeline and this big, and it's really hard to wrap your head around that, especially when you're younger, because you feel like that's
you're in that moment.
everything.
Yep. And you're stuck. You feel like you're I wouldn't even say stuck, because that's bad to say about a baby. But you feel helpless to a degree, I bet.
I felt like I wasn't sure, what the future looked like as me as a mother that young. I never felt stuck. I never felt like, I immediately felt like, well, he's mine to take care of now. But again, what I got in return from him and my children was unconditional love, which was, again, something that I didn't even know existed. That feeling of, oh my goodness, there's love without consequence. There's love without, having to do this, and this. And so I think that's is something really special that came from something that was difficult.
Absolutely. And it's the love and joy that comes from a child is just
they're pure and they're innocent, and I'm getting to live it all over again with my grandkids. Like the things they say and the things that they do is just like, I am, and being older now, I'm able to appreciate some things, because looking back, I think I was very living in the moment with my kids when they were little. I think I was just kind of trying to it was fight or flight, just trying to just, we got to
keep your head above water.
Yeah, I felt like I was just trying to we got to get this done and we've got to be able to get this, and school's coming and we got to do backpacks and this, and all the things, and you weren't always able to appreciate the little moments because you were trying to, live in that fast fury of. And so now with grandkids, I'm able to appreciate those smaller things.
Just slow down a little bit.
The little things they tell me, the little things they say, that it just brings so much joy and happiness that you get to experience it again at a different pace.
Well, and that's what they say, being a grandparent is the reward for not killing your kids. Is that what the old saying says? But
I'm not gonna lie, I have said a few times, can I just tap out? As a parent, when do I get to, because it's not easy. Being a parent isn't easy, and I think that looking at it from a standpoint of my kids are now adults and I have grandchildren, but as you're that young, you're growing up too. You're learning too, and you're making mistakes.
Yep.
And you don't know how to handle everything all the time. You don't know how to be a parent all the time. You don't, and you bring experiences and things from your past, your traumas.
Yep, you bring
as
that baggage
a child
along.
Or as a daughter, and you go, am I doing this right? I don't know. I mean, and to be honest, I think I probably would have even been a better mother if I had been able to use Google at the time, or how do we do this with the fever?
Yeah.
Or what do we do with because I was so unsure of so many things, and I was kind of growing up with them too, and I hope that they can look back and understand and offer some grace to me that, I wasn't always a perfect parent. I wasn't a perfect wife. I wasn't a perfect friend to people in situations because, I was in a place that I wasn't where I should be, internally.
Yeah.
And sometimes, and I've told my kids this before, however somebody feels internally is what spills out around them, and it affects what's around them. And so when I've had one of my kids come to me and say, this person or whatever, and that says a lot about them and how you handle it and how you go from here in that situation is on you.
Absolutely.
And that's a lot.
Yeah, it is. And the funny part is so my parents, I can relate from the kind of your kids' side a little bit, because once again, my parents were both 20 when they had me, and really, they were still kids at that point, because I look back and I go, I couldn't have an 11-year-old at this point in my life. Well, heck, they had an 11 and a 10 technically, because they had my brother and I back to back. And I could. I say that, but I don't. So I'm like, well, that would have been really hard, is the right answer, right?
I think the saving grace is that you don't know that you can't do it.
Exactly. You have no idea either way.
You don't have a choice, and you're going to figure it out.
Yeah, and we would have in life, but I do realize now that I've been able to reflect and go, yeah, you know what? They were growing up with me. It was part of life, and it's not a bad thing. Are there times when they fell short? Absolutely. But I also think, too, regardless of when you have kids, you're going to fall short. The constant reminder that I have is when we brought our daughter home, and my mother-in-law was like, "Oh yeah, didn't they explain all that to you at the hospital?" And I was like, "They made us watch a video that said don't beat the crap out of the baby." If that's what you're talking about. They literally said it was called Purple Cry. We had to watch that. They didn't even show me how to change a diaper. I did learn how to swaddle. I'm very good at it for our next one. But other than that, like it was. They're like, here, yeah, just don't kill her.
And
like,
so what if you don't know how to swaddle?
And
so what if you don't know all the things that everybody thinks you should know? You know, I think that we were created to take care of
naturally
and nurture.
Yes.
And so what all those things? I mean, there's so many things that are supposed to be like, you know, this is the thing right now, you know, this is the trend. Okay, so it is.
Yes.
So it is.
Yeah. And you know what? I think that if I recall things correctly, we've been doing this for quite a few thousand years. There's a few generations in between me and, you know, the original.
And here we are, still going.
And we'll figure it out. Like,
there are some wrong ways to do things. There are, but you learn really fast that you don't do it again,
yes.
or that, you know, yeah.
Well, and the constant thing that I'm reminded of is like, there are kids that, from the outside looking in, had perfect homes, perfect home life, went to church, and then end up being...
If that's a thing.
Yeah. Yeah. They end up being more messed up than the kid that didn't look like... But I always use an analogy: the doctor and the lawyer, or the doctor and the alcoholic, and they were twins, and they both. They go,
same
why?
Family.
Yep.
Same upbringing.
Why are you a doctor? Because my dad was an alcoholic. Why are you an alcoholic? Because my dad was an alcoholic. It's perspective.
It is.
And it's giving. That's the biggest gift you can give your kids is just perspective.
Perspective, and teaching them that they have choices.
Yes.
You can choose. And I've given this lecture before. You can be upset, and you can be upset. You can feel bad. You can cry. I'm not going to allow you to unpack here.
Yep.
This is not where you live. And so I'm telling you this because I've been through these things. I've been through bad times in my life, and I did think that some people do try. That's comfortable for them. That's what they know. They want to unpack and stay there, and sometimes they don't have the tools to figure out how to pack all their things and move on from that spot. And so I mean finding and realizing that there's tools available is another whole thing. But
well, and I think too, like a lot of times with folks, it's helplessness. Like they feel like they're.
Sure.
I've been there. I think we all have.
Everybody has been. Sure.
But there comes a time when you either choose to live in that moment, like you said, and stay. Throw your things around and leave it there, or pack up and move to a different direction. And I love that analogy. Actually, that's beautiful. And
you can be upset, and you can cry, and you can sit in here in this moment, and you're allowed to, because grief. There's no, everything, every loss, whether it's a friendship or a relationship or an actual true loss, of a death or whatever. I mean, there's no timeline in the grief of things. You can't tell somebody, hey, you should be feeling better by now, or you should. But you can say to them, you can't unpack here. You cannot stay.
It's infinite.
It's not, this is not where you're intended to be. You've got to continue to go forward. Yeah. Because life keeps moving forward.
Yes.
The world doesn't stop for you when you feel a certain way.
No.
You don't get the world to stop when you're feeling the way you are, and you still got to be mom. You still have to push forward, and you still have to be dad, and you still have to go to work, and
yeah, you have to be the version of yourself that you feel like you want to be, and I think that too oftentimes people get stuck in a zone, whether that's being a young parent or for me, I failed as a business owner pretty big, and I'm glad that my life went the way that it did, because I learned from that, and I think it made me who I am. That's the other thing is that we play, and I've already touched on this, but the comparison game just kills so much spirit.
You can't compare anything. Like you can't. I've been through a divorce, and I had someone say, I went through a divorce, I understand. No, you don't. You don't understand my situation. Yours wasn't anything like mine. Mine wasn't anything like yours. My life leading up to that point was not the same as your life.
The version
leading
of
up
that
to.
person.
So, you can understand how it can be difficult. You can understand, but you may not fully understand what someone's truly going through. And so I think you've got to be careful when you're trying to offer condolences or offer, hey, I get it. Like, it's, or it's not a big deal, but it's a big deal to me.
Absolutely.
It matters to me, so I think that sometimes, I forget that, like, I have no idea. I'm sorry that you're going through that. That's the best thing you can offer somebody. Because you can't compare anything.
No, you can't. And, yeah, it's hard, and back to that perfect household versus the one that wasn't so nice.
No,
What's trauma to those two people, though, is two entirely different things.
Sure.
The kid that had, the nucleus household, went to church every Sunday, their trauma could be something very, very minute.
Sure.
But I guarantee you what the other person would consider trauma that was in maybe a broken home or, had drugs and alcohol or something much worse than that, or that person's trauma is going to be on an entirely different level if we're going to put it on that. So, it's, and even with your kids with birth order, what your oldest sees as trauma is, I bet you, entirely different what your youngest
Absolutely.
sees.
Yeah.
And because I know I could put up a lot more crap than most of my siblings can just because I'm the
I've heard
oldest.
that from a lot of people too. Them saying I was the oldest one. I had to see everything. I've heard that. I mean, I didn't experience that in my own childhood because my brother was quite a few years older than me, and I mean there was some space in between us, and I never experienced like that. Oh, I was the baby and I got this, or he did. I don't think that was how it was for us, but I have heard it from other people that, being the oldest or the youngest, or I was the middle child, and there really truly is a birth order.
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. And I actually will ask people if I start talking to them and I see some traits, I'll be like, where were you at in birth order? And they probably think I'm a weirdo. But
No.
and I'm
Well, I mean, I understand it, so I
yeah,
guess.
it's because your oldest is generally your leader. They're generally the one that's going to, feel the need to go out and achieve, and because that's generally the one that you're pushing, like, oh, we're gonna get all A's in school.
Oh, yes.
And then by the time that baby comes around, you're like, just graduate. just
C's get degrees.
Yes,
I
absolutely.
said, C's get
Yes, absolutely. You're gonna be a lot more lax. That's just one representation of that. And it's not. It doesn't make one over the other any better. That's what makes them as who they are as people. And that's what it really comes down to. The funny part is like you'll watch. Two oldest generally don't do well together in a relationship, and it's because they're very strong-willed. Both of them want to be the leader. Like they're just too similar, and that's always like kind of fun to watch for me. And it's cool when like two of them do it. Like my wife and I have a couple friends that are both only children, and I think that's such a unique dynamic just in and of itself, just being an only child. And I'm like, y'all are together, like. That's just wild, but they make it work, and it works for them. And it's an abnormality, and to me, because like I said, I'm not a psychology major, but I just like studying it and like seeing it and seeing how, I guess it'd be more sociology, kind of a mix between the two, but just seeing that is like
There's a true
fun.
science behind it.
Yes.
There is. There's proof behind it. Having gone to nursing school and taking psych myself, like there was a lot of really cool, they were like, you're not allowed to diagnose anyone. And I was like, oh, this person's this.
I see the narcissistic
I was
tendencies in that
diagnosing
one.
myself, and I was like, oh, great.
Yeah.
I didn't know I had that. Like, no wonder. But
yeah, and well, that's the other thing is you start to unveil the curtain, and you're like, oh, maybe I do have that.
Yeah.
But it's
I think self-reflection is the hardest thing. It is, especially when you've wronged someone or you've been in a situation or, a relationship or something, and you go, man, like, I played a part in this, and so I think that all comes with growth too. Like, I think.
Absolutely. Well, and that's another thing too, is like when you start to self-reflect on a failed relationship, whether that's friendship, dating, marriage, whatever it is, you do start to, if you're a self-reflection person, you can go, yeah, it wasn't all them. I'm not saying that they're faultless, because I'm not, but I had a role to play, and I dropped the ball here and there, or maybe I could have done things a little bit different.
Yeah.
But it's part of life, and that's the beauty of it, is that your race is different than mine. And that's where, like, that's just my hope for everyone, is that they can just start to realize that and stop.
I'm trying to slow my race down. And it's not going real well. I'm just going to throw that out there because now I'm like working in another whole big flower bed.
But it's so cool that you decided, it's a little bit atypical, right, to do it after you have grandbabies, to start this new venture and have fun with that stuff. But it's.
I mean, I don't feel as old as my body feels.
And you never should.
And you're going to hear that a lot as you're around older people. You're like, my mind feels. I feel like I'm this age. I hear that a lot from patients and things like I feel like I should be this age, but like my body tells me, and I'm definitely feeling that.
Oh, I haven't aged a day over 25 since I turned 20. I forget all the time how old I am.
Yeah.
I don't know.
Yeah.
Sure. Like, now I got my kid as a reference point, so I'm like, yeah, no, but at a year, what? Okay, yeah, 30,
Yeah.
30 plus her, that'll work.
Yeah.
You know, but yeah, otherwise, age is really just a number aside from how well you take care of your body. I mean, that would be the only thing that should, in theory, slow you down. And quite frankly, you learn so much more as you age, or you should be. Some folks don't. That sucks. But if you're doing life, what I look at is right. That's how you should be. You should be learning, like we talked about. Heck, the wisdom should, in theory, bring you up. You know, a
Your
little
emotional intelligence.
Yes.
You should have some growth with your emotional intelligence, and I think that's a nice goal to have.
bit. It is absolutely. Well, as we get towards the end here, Holli, this has been really fun. We're 75 minutes or so. What's is there anything else that you would like to share that we didn't talk about? I'd like to open up the floor here at the end, and this is your minute.
I can't think of anything, and I think we touched on a lot of little areas, and we had a lot of. I mean, I tried to be open about some things I've learned. Maybe people can learn from me, or like take
always the
from,
goal.
you know, or why I'm at almost 50 years old and starting a new business, but it is, for me, it was the importance of realizing how fast really life is, and there's those important moments, and the fact that we have to take time, and we have to recognize that it's important to do those things, to slow down and have those memories, and you know, I think recognizing that is been what's been big for me. Like, just recognize that you need to slow down, that you can take the time, and that you can do those other things later. There are some things prioritize, but you can come cut flowers.
I will.
And take some time and just, you know, have the quiet and enjoy the scenery, and hopefully it's a peaceful thing. And that's what I'm going for.
I'm excited to bring the wife and daughter down and see what you guys got going on, and we'll have to make a day trip out of it. Like I said, the only thing that stinks for us is we live a little further north, but either way, we're down here all the time. I don't mind driving, my wife hates it, but life goes on. And otherwise, it's really been an enjoyable time having you on here and
Thank you for
hearing your
having
life
me.
story. Of course, absolutely. We love. I say we, like there's a whole production staff back there, but I love hearing everyone's stories and really just figuring out what makes them tick. That's so enjoyable to me, and figuring out what their purpose is deeper than themselves.
And you learn from it. You learn from other people's experiences, and it gives you something to reflect on. And I think that's why I was so thankful to have my nursing career, is just listening to people from different walks of life and different ages, and the things they tell you, and what's really important and what matters. And maybe that's why I've gotten to the point where I am now.
Absolutely. Absolutely. That's awesome. Well, thanks guys for listening in. If you got something from today, my only asking always is that you share it. I mean, we talked a lot about life changes, you know, what we can do to elevate ourselves. I think probably the biggest takeaway that I would have to say is the quality time with the people that you love and care about, and making sure that you make that time to make those memories. Be intentional with your folks. Be intentional with the people that you love. Find a reason beyond yourself to elevate those people, so that your kids, grandkids, significant other, whoever those people are in your life, friends, even coworkers, have an opportunity to talk about you and about how great of a person you not only are today, but who you will be when we're no longer here. So didn't mean to get gloomy there at the end, but either way, share the podcast with somebody that you think can get something out of today. And other than that, keep asking yourself, what's your why?